Welcome to this Learning Lab webinar, Keeping Your Green Team Active During COVID. I'm Colya Braun-Greiner, the religious educator with Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, and I'm accompanied by my colleague, Natalie Johnson, IPC's August Office Manager and Development Assistant. She'll be monitoring the chat during this webinar and any other questions you may have. I'm going to share with you that this program is part of our Faithful Green Leaders training. And if you haven't been to a training yet, I know many of you already have who have joined us on this webinar. If you haven't taken that training though, it's really a wonderful way to build or strengthen your green team to take action to heal creation. And I encourage you to check out our website in our programs area of our website and look for Faithful Green Leaders Training. We have a training coming right up February 11th, followed by 2 consecutive Thursdays, as well as June and August. Pardon me, October is the third training this year. So let's open with a prayer and reflection. I'd like to share the words from Potawatomi botanist and writer Robin Wall Kimmerer, who writes in her beautiful book, Braiding Sweetgrass, these words: "As we work to heal the earth heals us. We don't have to figure out everything by ourselves. There are intelligences other than our own, teachers all around us." Her teaching echoes wisdom found in the Hebrew Bible's book of Job. God says to Job, "Ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you, or speak to the fish and they will inform you, and listen to the earth and it will teach you. Which of all of these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this?" Let us pray. God, grant us wisdom to listen to what the earth and all communities of life have to teach us about living in balance and harmony with one another. Amen. All right, we are now going to hear about many ways you can be actively caring for creation while doing safe, socially distanced activities during COVID. During these challenging times of COVID, it may seem impossible to do anything due to these limiting conditions we're facing. If you have felt understandably overwhelmed and short of ideas for how you and your green team can stay engaged in the face of these many challenges, do not lose heart. We are going to share with you many ideas, and we have presenters from congregations who have implemented some of these: spiritual nature walks, virtual film discussions, planting pollinator gardens. As you see here, the church, St. Thomas Church, planted these native plants, and learning lab recordings. All of our learning labs are recorded, and you can find them on our website. Oh, planting trees as well. Many congregations doing that, and you hear about one on this webinar. Apply for funding for future projects. Signing the Partner Congregation Pledge. You'll find more about that on our website too. Rain garden maintenance, building bat houses, which you'll hear about on this webinar, getting water or energy audits done, and legislative advocacy. All of these can be done during these challenging times of COVID. Now let's hear from congregation green team members what they've been doing over the past several months. And everyone, please hold your questions until the end and enter your questions in the comments in the chat box. You can enter these anytime during the webinar, and after all the presenters are finished, then we will field the questions. Starting right off, I'd like to introduce Susan Mayer, from Green Team Leader from Faith Lutheran Church, and she's going to share about her film hosting that she did, a screening and discussion. Take it away, Susan.
Thank you. I wanted to give credit to your organization because another young lady from our congregation and I took the training in the summer, and that was the inspiration for hosting this film discussion in October. And it was just one of the list of things that you get when you go to your training. You get the handbook, which has lots and lots of ideas for what your green team can do either these days or when we open back up. The invitation that we put out was inspired and designed by the other young lady that took the training. Her name is Victoria. And we did this as 3 churches on what we call Sherwood Hill, which is Sherwood Road in Cockeysville. And our idea was to find out what our impact on the Loch Raven watershed was. So that was the goal of getting people interested in looking at a film about the importance of water and pollution to the water. And we started off our evening with a poll, and that's what you see the first thing on this slide. Which word most closely describes your feelings before watching the story of plastic? And Victoria had chosen the most inviting image of the story of plastic. There were a lot of different images, and part of the invitation was to make it welcoming and exciting to look at. And so she chose this, even though it's kind of a pleasant looking image, you know, you do see the image of the bottle in the water. And so people had all different expectations of the film. We took the poll, and that was actually another thing that we learned at the leaders training, is to get people excited right away at the beginning of your session if you're doing something online. I think we can just look at this quick second poll that we took halfway through the training. And that was, you know, did you already know about these 2 aspects that we were going to be talking about in the session? So you can go to the next slide. So we've been asked to talk about how we advertised. Victoria designed this Eventbrite thing in, she imitated another person's, you know, another organization's invitation, and she did a great job, I thought. And then we posted it on Facebook, and then we had an agenda. We invited 3 organizations to talk about themselves. I know at least one of the presenters is on this webinar tonight, Bonnie Surak. And we tried to tie it all together. And the result of the evening was that our 3 churches are in conversation with IPC to do a water audit at the end of February. Thank you, Bonnie. And in coordination with the Gunpowder Valley Conservancy. And from a personal level, you can go to the next slide. I found out that there was an organization that does reusable containers. And so now, instead of buying plastic containers at the store, sometimes I'll order products in these reusable containers. And that's it.
Thank you, Susan. That is so inspiring, and shows a wonderful ripple effect of the training that you took. So thank you again for sharing both your experience and this wonderful example of taking action during time of COVID and helping others become aware of the problem of plastic and the scourge of it in our environment and what people can do about it. Thanks so much. Well, now we're going to move on to our next presenter, and that is Stu Stainman, Green Team Leader at Beth Am Synagogue. And he's going to share about the actions that he helped coordinate there. Take it away, Stu.
Thank you, Kolya. So Beth Am is a conservative Jewish congregation in Baltimore City. We have about 500 memberships. We are located just below Druid Hill Park. we are blessed with a very talented membership, people in very diverse professions, very skilled at the top of their professions. And we have a number of people who work in various aspects of the environmental field. And our environmental team had always wanted to figure out how can we draw on the in-house talent that we have. Well, when there was a lot of hype building up about Earth Day 50th anniversary celebration, we got the idea to develop a panel discussion of some of our members and to have them talk about their experience. The four people are of different age groups, their perspectives, what trends they see, what their hopes are for the future. So we asked the four people, all of them eagerly agreed. We went to our synagogue program coordinator and said, find us an open date with nothing else competing, as close to Earth Day as you can. We wound up with about a week after Earth Day. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. And we had a really good discussion from the four panel members. One of them, Ben Furtick, dropped out. But Evie Schwartz who was the youngest member, talked about her experiences and her full-time job of promoting residential solar energy installation in residences. So after each of the four presented their experiences, we then had an open discussion with the congregation about what does the congregation think we should do next? What can the congregation do as a whole? And what, when we get back into our building, and what do you want the environmental team to work on next? And one of the issues that came up was more education and a program on residential solar energy installations in homes. So even though we didn't have a huge crowd, we had about 15, 20 members listening in, but it generated a number of new names of the membership who we did not have on environmental team. So it helped build up the list of people to participate in the environmental team. That was another benefit of it. Anyway, so afterwards I talked with Evie and I asked her to put together a residential energy solar power program for the membership. She had been doing just that with Joelle Novi from Interfaith Power and Light. But they were stymied they were doing it in person with other congregations, but they were stymied by the COVID shutdown of everything. So I asked them to work out a way that they could do their presentation via Zoom. They eagerly did. And if you could go to the next slide. Yep. So we developed a advertising post. And again, we went to the synagogue coordinator and said, Evie worked with her and she asked to find a quiet weekday evening when there was no other competition going on. And as in the first one, we advertised the program on our monthly bulletin, which is mailed out to everyone, and our weekly email blasts. Evie suggested that we find a member of the congregation who already did have solar energy panels, who could talk about his live experience, how it was working for him, if he was happy with it, if he enjoyed it. And so we got Alan Pressman to join us, and it was a perfect fit. It was, and then, so I mentioned what we were doing to Bonnie Sorak, and Bonnie said, can we expand the potential audience to other congregations within the interfaith congregation? So I said, sure, the more the merrier. And we put it on the Interfaith Partnership group chat. And in fact, I would say a half to 2/3 of the people who participated were from Betham, and the other were from 4 other congregations within the interfaith team. And it was very good. We had lots of questions from the audience of when is it appropriate to have solar energy, and when not, what are the pros and cons, what are the economics of it, and how does it work, and so forth. And Evie was able to answer everybody's questions. There was a really good discussion. And if you can go to the next slide, the good news,
Oops,
that's
sorry.
not ours.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It must be missing. So please go ahead and just
Okay,
talk about that.
Evie and Joelle Novi were very pleased with how that presentation was, and they've been continuing to make Zoom presentations to other congregations and groups. And in fact, Evie, I communicated with her earlier today, and she would be glad if any other congregation wants to sponsor a program for residential solar energy education. Evie and Joelle are still in the business, and they would be glad to help out. So Evie it's Evie Schwartz at Civic Works. If you don't have the slide, is it possible to post somewhere the Evie's contact information?
Yes, in fact, we can also put that in the email we'll send out to everyone with this recording, so we can do both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you very much, Stu. That is so inspiring. You really created a ripple effect. That's awesome. Okay, now without any further ado, I want to introduce Adrienne Knight from Knox Presbyterian Church in Baltimore. She is the Green Team leader there, and so we're looking forward to hearing about your story, Adrienne. Go ahead.
All right, my story starts off with, I think I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. How many times have we heard that? But my favorite verse of that is, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. So every time I see the tree and all how it grows tall, looks like it's trying to reach the sky. As you can see here, we planted over 100, I think it was 120 trees in the Oliver community. And right across the street from our church is a memorial garden. If you want to Google this, it is for the Dawson family that was, they had a drug threw a cocktail in and killed off the entire family. So they have a memorial garden right across the street where we had the prayer blessing of the trees, and the members that were there helping with the trees with blue water. We put tags on the trees that said these trees were blessed by the Knox Presbyterian Church in October 2020. So as we go through the neighborhood, even now, the tags are still there to remind us that these are blessed trees and they will continue to flourish through the summer. We can't wait to see what they're going to look like. And the summer, and for all the colors and the changing from the summer to the spring to the fall of the year. So yes, they have been blessed, and we had quite a few folks to come out and be a part of the blessing and with the Oliver community. So it's not just our Knox Church, it's the entire community that we are a part of that is coming out. It's a small number, but we still keep trucking on, and we did a campaign in the neighborhood by knocking on doors to see who would enjoy a tree, and they were able to pick the tree that they wanted in front of their house. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Of course, we had, after the tree planting, we did some walking around the neighborhood just to see what it looks like with all the trees, and thinking about the possibilities of what different spaces would look like with the change. So you can see the gentleman at the bottom, I guess, explaining what it would look like if they changed the lot. And this is right across the street from our church and next to a school that we planted some trees. Even though they said the trees, I think the motto over there, the trees are growing like the children, but there weren't any trees there. The sign was still there. But now, because of our campaign and planting, now they have some new trees to continue to grow with the children that will attend that school. So just think, even though they're not there now, when they come back, they will have some trees, and they can probably even stand next to it and say, this tree was my size when I started here, or I was a little taller, or vice versa, because I even have my own tree that says is growing taller than me on the church lot, or was on the church lot. Okay, let's go ahead on. And sometimes we, back to the other slide, sometimes we forget about just looking at our own neighborhood. We go every place else and we sign up for, oh, I need to go out of the country to see things. But during these walks, even before this picture, just walking in the neighborhood to see what was going on, places we don't even look because we just drive by. But now with COVID-19, I think it helps us to just take a look at what's going on in our own little neighborhood. So I think the nature walk does help us to see what's going on. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Well, this is on the side of our church, a parking lot side. We started with we started with planting trees on another property. Then we moved to a vacation Bible school with the Water Heroes. And now from that, we had this mural done with some of the kids from Vacation Bible School. And this year, I think it's been 3 years now that we did the mural. So now we're in phase 2 or 3 of our project. And we will have a kickoff on March the 21st. We will groundbreak this piece of property in front of the mural for our new pollinator garden. So they will start groundbreaking, like I said, from March the 20th through the 27th. And as you see, that I'm holding what the grounds will look like with all of our flowers. So if you want to come by on April the 17th, we will start planting, and I need some extra hands on that. So if you like colors blue or yellow or red, take your favorite color and plant it on the garden, and I will give you a label just to attach with your name and the date you planted. So next year when you come back, you will say, this is my baby, and have it a birthday party for 1 year old. All right, that's our future plan. So we are keep moving even with COVID-19. Can't wait to see our garden. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. I can't wait to see it either. It sounds like someone needs to mute. You can make
Okay.
sure your mic is muted. Thank you. Thank you so much, Adrian. That was such an inspiring story of how you've engaged your whole community in caring for creation and beautifying your neighborhood. Thank you. Well, now we come, last but certainly not least, George Kaplan, Green Team member at St. Mary Ann's Episcopal Church in Northeast. Hello, George.
Hi, everybody. St. Mary Ann's is a very old Episcopal church, actually. The parish was established by the Colonial General Assembly back in 1706. And we worship in a building that was built in 1743. So we're up in Cecil County, which is up in the northeast corner of Maryland. We have 5 acres on the Northeast River, which is a river that comes off the very top of the Chesapeake Bay. And we've got about 200 yards of shoreline there, which is it's tidal at that point. And aside from our church building, we've got 5 other structures on our 5 acres. So all of this is in the Chesapeake Bay critical area. So our green team was actually just organized about a year ago. We took the IPC training in, I think, mid February last year. And so, at that training, we developed a whole bunch of ideas about where we wanted to go. And then, just a couple of weeks later, everything shut down because of COVID. And that included all of our collective church activity, was stopped. Our bishop just pretty much closed everything down. So when things started to reopen in June, we decided to concentrate on things we could do outdoors. So our congregation actually worshiped outdoors all during the summer from June all the way through September, up until St. Francis Day at the beginning of October. So we wanted our first green project to be visible to other people in our congregation, because nobody knew that we even had a green team at that point. So we decided to start a pollinator garden on the side of an old house that's on our property. That's, you can see it there in the picture. It's just used for storage now. Doesn't have any utilities. Our pollinator garden is pretty modest compared to what Adrian had, but we do plan to enlarge it this coming spring. But we had no water source. That old house had its utilities turned off a long time ago. So we didn't have any water. The nearest hose was, it was about 200 feet away. So we decided, as part of the pollinator garden, to put in a rain barrel. So in the leftmost picture there at the lower left corner, you can see the edge of our church's parking lot. So we've put the pollinator garden and the rain barrel in a very visible location where everybody who pulls into the parking lot is going to see it. But actually, it wasn't. You can see the date there. We didn't even get approval to start this project until July, because our church's vestry, its governing board, was just taken up entirely with COVID-related issues, and they didn't approve our project until July. So the whole thing started really late. And as I say, the pollinator garden needs to be enlarged, and we need to get a bigger variety of plants in it. And we hope to do that this spring. But what you see there in those 2 pictures is actually the installation of the rain barrel, which was donated by one of our members. So the rain barrels worked out very well. We had a pretty good rain, and later in September that filled the thing up. But by that time, the plants really didn't need the water. They were fine. So we haven't actually used the rain barrel as a water source yet, but I'm sure that'll come this summer when things, dry out. And of course, a rain barrel also serves to limit rainwater runoff into the river. So, we actually hope to be able to eventually put more rain barrels up on our property, but we have to start somewhere. So that's what we did. So the second project we did a little month or so later, we had a member of our congregation who has built bat boxes. They look a little bit like bird houses, but they're not. The entrance to the bat boxes are up through the bottom. So they won't be occupied by birds because they don't have any floor in them. So he's made a number of these bat boxes and knows a lot about the habits of bats and told us where to put them up. You can see the edge of the river there in the rightmost picture. They're on 12-foot 4x4s. So we will see whether they're put up in November, but we didn't expect occupancy until this coming summer. So we'll see what happens. We can move the boxes if we need to, if we don't get any residents. But of course, bats are, tremendously efficient eaters of insects. So, and we've got plenty down by the river. I can guarantee you the bats will have their fill of mosquitoes in the summertime if we get residences. So those were our two outside projects that we did. Neither one of them took a huge amount of time or that many people, and were all done without cost to our congregation because everything was donated. So one of the other things we want to do this coming spring is put up some signage around the pollinator garden and the rain barrel, explaining why it's there and what they do and what the function is. So that's what I've got.
That's awesome. And signage is great. It's another way of multiplier effect of your project. So you can educate everyone else about why is this thing here? What is it doing? How is it contributing to care for creation? So thanks, George, for sharing your story about your installing a rain barrel and building these beautiful bat boxes to help the wildlife and the other than human world. I'm now going to turn to another example of actions that congregation teams can take during this time, and that is advocacy, virtual advocacy. I want to stress that it's important that folks who are in the faith community have a moral voice, and what a difference you can make in expressing that voice. It is actually very effective to gather congregation members together and agree to call about a particular issue or legislation to your local representative, and you can stay informed about actions and issues through our advocacy webpage on our webpage at interfaithchesapeake.org. And we always post updates there on the latest issues. So it's important to know that you can continue doing advocacy, nonpartisan advocacy, but advocating for creation, God's beautiful world, and improving the environment. People of faith can do that, and your voice is taken seriously by legislatures. You have power to do so. So now we come to questions, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Natalie to see what is in the chat. We have about 20 minutes remaining or so to have some discussion, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see everyone. And what do we have, Natalie?
So right now we don't have any questions in the chat, just people sharing their congregations and affiliations. So if anyone has any
Okay.
questions now.
Yeah, now's the time you can unmute yourself and just chime in if you're curious about asking one of the presenters how they pulled this off, or what you might do, or an idea you're having and or struggling with how to implement.
So now we are getting some questions in the chat. So it looks like Julia is asking, besides trees, can we do herbal gardens?
I would say absolutely. At herbal gardens, and there are lots of herbs you can plant. We do encourage native plants. Native plants help the whole habitat, the pollinators that are native to our area, to flourish. So I encourage you to do that. And trees can be planted as well. So, as Adrian's story showed.
Mhm. And then Mark Wright asked, could you share the name of the bat box expert? That might be a question for George.
Yeah, his name is Vernon Tome, and I can pass contact information, I guess, through Collier, if you want. I don't immediately have his email address, but I can get that for you. There was another question about the rain barrel, whether it needed to be covered in the wintertime. Actually, we disassembled it and put the rain barrel inside that storage house for the winter because we don't need the water. The water will freeze. There's the possibility of damage. So my understanding is most people who have rain barrels either disconnect them or divert the water during the winter time so that there won't be frozen, frost damage.
And George, another question, where is the best place to put the bat boxes, like location wise?
Well, Vernon told us, number one, of course, we're fortunate to be on a river, lots of bugs on the river, and across the river from us are woods. So we have a pretty fortunate location. And he told us to put the bat boxes near the river, but not up in the trees. In other words, to make sure the bat boxes are separated from the trees. That was not intuitive to me, but that's the way we did it. And as I say, it remains to be seen this summer whether we'll have success or not.
I see Linda Coyle has a question for Adrian about tree planting. Linda, can you chime in and unmute yourself, ask your question about trees?
Yeah. So I've been involved in some tree plantings before, but these look like pretty big trees. And
can you speak up a little, please?
does that help?
Yes.
Okay. It's my earbuds. I've been involved in tree plantings before, but those look like fairly big trees, which are heavy. And they planted 100 of them spread out. So just the logistics, like, well, one, how did you get the trees? What was the funding? Did some group supply the trees? And how did you get them to the places you needed them? And how did you get the holes dug? Then I have a couple of other things.
Okay. Well, the holes were dug by us. Well, the team that's out there. The trees were brought in by Blue Water.
Blue Water.
And they used our parking lot as the staging. And then they cut the holes in the, in the pits outside. So and then they dropped the trees to their areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, if I could just dip in, Linda, so yes, those are bigger trees than we normally do with volunteer plantings, but because Blue Water was involved, that's why we were able to do that size tree. So it really depends. We have people from all over the watershed. So if you're interested in doing a tree planting, just get in touch with us and we can connect you with whoever the right tree people are in your area. There are tree planting funds in most areas, but if there's not, I would recommend that you could do a Chesapeake Bay Trust mini grant application for your congregation. And if you're interested in that, you can look at one of our recorded learning labs. We did one on grant writing, and there's all information about doing grant writing. Those grants are up to $5,000. So you certainly can plant quite a few trees with $5,000 if your location, if your county or city doesn't have an already tree planting program in place. And I just want to go back for a second to something that George said about his rain barrel. I'm going to plug the learning labs again, because you do need to winterize your cisterns and your rain barrels. And we have a learning lab recorded about that too. So look at maintaining your rain gardens and cisterns. That's on our website also. So yes, you have to drain if you didn't drain it this winter, uh-oh. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Exactly.
That's great. In Frederick, we've usually worked with StringLink to do tree plantings. So, but I wanted to give well, one, my church has been doing spiritual walks once a month. And those have been well attended. It's been fun. We've just pick a different location and focus each time, do some reflections, some talking and walking. We don't get very far, but we do these walks. But the other thing is I wanted to give a shout out for Multi-Faith Alliance of Climate Stewards. We have 2 events coming up. One in March with Doug Tallamy, and the other one in April with Carrie Wickstead from DNR about native plants. So we're just finalizing the flyers for them. So those will be going up soon, and we'll share them with IPC and IPL.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Linda.
They're free. They're free.
Those are other great examples of actions you can take.
And then, so Kolya, someone asked if there was a good resource for good native plants. I mean, it looks like Colleen mentioned that Blue Water Baltimore has native plants at their Herring Run Nursery in Baltimore.
Yes.
And are there any others that anyone knows of as well?
Yeah, it really depends on your region. If your nurse, and you can also encourage your nursery if they don't have any or a wide range of native plants. The more people with consumer pressure, they'll get some more native plants.
Yes, I'll jump in again. Like Kolya said, it really depends on where you're located, who your local provider would be. So like in Anne Arundel County, we know a native plant place. So just reach out to us and we'll try to connect you with the native plant nurseries in your area. And then also, I will say that the regular nurseries are starting to label their stock more because people are asking. So, so if you're in Home Depot or Lowe's, like you can ask them, say, I'm interested in native plants. That's what's going to get, it's the almighty dollar that drives what they stock. And if more people ask, then they will end up stocking those things.
I see a question from Jody Morris about litter pickup or trash pickups. Well, I'll give a little testimonial myself, and then ask Jody if he has some other questions about how to do that. My green team at my church, Seekers Church, is called Earth and Spirit, and we had a stream cleanup here, Sligo Creek stream cleanup between Silver Spring and Tacoma, and we were all socially distanced, and we brought gloves for everybody. Everybody was masked, and we spent the morning cleaning up the creek. That's one form of litter pickup that we can do during this time. Did you have some other questions about that, Jody?
No, not really. I just am glad to hear that it's happening, and it sounds like it's a matter of like organizing at the very local level of the church members and friends. And
yes, and there's a couple programs too. One is from the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay called Project Stream Clean.
Yeah.
And also Alice Ferguson Foundation also. And they'll provide like the gloves and the bags, and that's very helpful. So
Wow, okay.
Yeah, we just need to know where you're located and we can connect
Exactly.
you.
Yeah.
And I'll just plug another good outdoor activity is invasive species removal, because it's great to plant new trees, but we also have to take care of our established forests. So if you have a group that is interested in going out and doing some work, then we can try to connect you with a forest conservation group that will put you onto a group of older growth forests to help caretake.
Yes.
Sounds great. Can you tell me the name of those two organizations again? I'm trying.
Yeah. The Alice Ferguson Foundation and also the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay.
Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. Okay.
Yeah. If you look up
Yeah.
on theirs, it's Project Clean Stream.
And I
They
also
us-
think the Isaac Walton Foundation also does stream cleanup. Isaac Walton, it's IZAAK.
Project
Yeah.
Clean Stream usually is organized in April of each year.
Project Clean Stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the Alliance for the Bays
Mhm.
program. We've participated in it just about every year because, we've got actual shoreline to clean up. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear about all the work that's being done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another outdoor activity that congregations like to do, and they like to do with their youth too, are storm drain stenciling. So when you go by and you see a storm drain and it says this drains to the Chesapeake Bay. So that's kind of the easier way to do that. But then other congregations we've had do artwork where they'll paint beautiful pictures of crabs and mermaids and all sorts of lovely things. And so that can be a beautiful art project because it's wonderful to incorporate art into our conservation efforts because that speaks to people in a wholly different way. So that's another outdoor activity that you can do socially distanced as well.
Yeah, it's a great way of engaging the youth too. I'm also recalling that Covenant United Methodist Church in Montgomery County, just north of Gaithersburg, they got training from the Isaac Walton League about stream monitoring, monitoring the health of the stream. And you can do that too. It's another outdoor activity that can be done. So stream monitoring, stream water quality monitoring.
There will also be in April, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's the Baltimore Environmental, it's the BioBlitz. That's what it is, a BioBlitz.
Yes.
And that's where you go out and as you walk, you take pictures using an app on your phone called iNaturalist. And you take pictures of all the nature that you see and you upload that. And it actually helps our scientists to be able to track where both flora and fauna are because of climate change. Things are moving, the lines are changing as where people are seeing certain animals and certain plants. So that really helps, so that gets thousands of what we call citizen scientists out there helping them to try to track where things are. So you'll see information about that coming out soon too. And that's a wonderful way. It's kind of like doing a treasure hunt in your own backyard. You just go for a walk and take pictures of everything you see. And then you upload it and they do that in Anne Arundel County, Howard County, Baltimore County, I believe it was Frederick and Hartford. And even if you don't have one in your area, you can do one on your own too. Like you can work with iNaturalist and do a BioBlitz on your own as well.
Any other questions or ideas?
There was one, let me see. Someone had one, how can interfaith power and light assist in audits or alternate energy solutions?
Well, Interfaith Power and Light, our partner organization, we say the distinction is they focus on energy conservation and climate justice. And we are also concerned about the health of the climate too, but we were primarily focused on water quality and making sure that our local environments in the watershed are healthy. So they will, if you connect, and we can offer that in the follow-up email also, how to get a hold of Interfaith Power and Light, and they can give you advice about how to get an energy audit. We've had many of our congregations do that. Has anyone here on the webinar done an energy audit at your congregation?
Yeah, we did a number of years ago. Yeah.
Great.
They'll also help you with not only the solar workshops that Stuart mentioned for congregants to be able to take solar home and community solar projects. If that's not something that the congregation, so if the congregation isn't suitable for solar they'll help with solar evaluations for your congregations as well. And then, if none of that works, then there's also community solar. So there are definitely ways to involve both the congregation and your members in changing to alternative energy sources.
Well, the other thing is that, and this was something actually Joelle told me about a number of years ago that we actually organized up here in Cecil County. And that is, there's a organization that helps homeowners as a group, if you can get 20 or so homeowners, to actually form a co-op for the purpose of buying solar energy panels. And you go out for bids, and because you've got 20 households there, you can get a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually did that up in Cecil County.
Yeah, that's
So,
great. Yeah, community solar purchasing.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I see two more questions in here. One is from Mark Wright about holding your trash cleanup during the pandemic. Wondering about trying to supervise everybody to make them social distance and wear their masks. For the panelists here, we didn't have trouble with, everyone was very respectful of each other, and our partners that were helping with plantings and things like that, they sanitized the tools in between. Each group got their own set of tools, so we didn't have to worry about people sharing. So it really hasn't been a problem. People came together in their pods, and so they planted in the pod so that they weren't really interacting with people outside of their family or people that they were comfortable with. So we arranged it that way. So that has worked out really well. And then there was another question in here about communication. And it says, what mode of communication has been working best for everyone? I always speak for our leaders here, but email, phone tree, texting, Facebook, everything, all the time, as much as you can.
Right, yes.
Right?
Multiple times.
And just don't forget those that don't have any of those above.
Yes,
because
exactly.
they're still part of our congregations and all our groups, that they need to still be a part of it.
Yes, thank you. Yes, phone calls are always a possibility and necessary for some. Any others?
I had a question for Adrian. This has been very frustrating to me. In front of our synagogue, we have two small tree wells, and the trees in them died, and I want to replace them with new trees, but I have been advised that we need to, or we should expand the size of the tree wells, which would require breaking up a small amount of concrete in the sidewalk. And I wonder if but I can't find anybody to do that work. And I wonder if in your tree planting, if you had to bust up any concrete on sidewalks, and if so, who can I contact to do similar work? Because I'm also in the city. I'm in Reservoir Hill.
No, I didn't have to bust up anything. Bonnie, you want to take this? Then
Oh, you're muted, Bonnie.
Dude, we've been trying to tackle this one for years. So in Adrian's neighborhood, we had a grant that was covering all of that work. So it hired the contractor because it was so many trees. It was a pretty substantial grant that covered that work. But you and I can work together. We can either do a mini grant, a CBT mini grant to get that done, or working with Tree Baltimore. We should be able to, we need to get those. I know, we need to take care of those trees for you, Stu.
How long, oh Lord, how long?
I know. Well, we'll do it.
Great. Well, I want to,
Go ahead, go ahead.
one more. Go ahead, Natalie.
There's one last question that Colleen was asking. So have your pastors been supportive, or has there been reluctance?
I'm assuming Colleen means reluctance to do activities like this during COVID. Anyone want to take that, Adrian or anyone else? Especially the outdoor activities. I think maybe some folks might be just a little nervous about that. But as Bonnie has suggested in our church, people were very respectful. We stayed in our little familiar groups, but we were all spread out up and down the stream picking up trash. So
Yeah.
The reluctance I found wasn't from the pastor. It was from the people who liked the way the gardens looked that were planted in the early 90s and mid 90s. Every single shrub and plant was non-native, and they liked it that way. They like mulch. They like one round thing. And so that was the challenge. How do you bring that reluctance around? And so I basically had to say, I promise I won't take anything out, which I actually didn't keep that promise, but I did it when people weren't looking. And I basically just planted in between and then showed pictures of what transpired. Look at these common Buckeye butterflies on this plant, and look at, there's nothing on the other one. So when people see positive results, even in little steps, that reluctance melted away really fast. I was amazed. Now I'm super happy because my main opponent was like, leave it alone. And I said, Pete, if you don't like it after 3 years, you can cut down everything I planted. So that kind of drew a line in the sand. And then he was on board. But the reluctance to keep things the way they are is the challenge when you're doing plantings.
Yes, that is a wonderful story, Karen. Thank you. And I say, if anyone hasn't heard Doug Ptolemy speak, or he was the person, the log fell out of my eye. No kidding. I could, as soon as I heard him speak and explain what the difference that native plants and trees make to our habitat, and even in my own little strip in front of my yard, plant it and they will come. The butterflies, the goldfinches, they're all out there now.
And you're in the faith world. You can use guilt. You can say, don't you want to be a good steward of this beautiful world that God gave us? Who's going to say no? I mean, yeah. So,
well,
that's a great way. So we should plug, Linda, the workshop that you're going to have. And so as soon as that comes out, we'll be sure to share that with everyone, and then share it with your congregations. And that's how we change hearts and minds, is we, like Kolya said, when you're, and I don't know if Adrienne wants to say anything. She saw Doug Ptolemy speak, seems like 10 years ago, but it was last year at the Anne Arundel Watershed Stewards Academy, their annual convention, and just phenomenal. If you didn't believe in God before you see the illustrations of the miraculous caterpillars, they're just incredible. The colors and the sizes and the shapes, it's just amazing, just truly amazing.
Yeah. Bonnie, for those who are not familiar with him, he is a professor at the University of Delaware. He is an entomologist. He's written a number of books on focusing on how native plants provide food and shelter for all sorts of animals, and the interrelationship between the native plants and and animals. And yeah, a couple of years ago, one of the churches in Bolton Hill sponsored a talk by him, and he like 300 slides, and just it Kolya is not exaggerating. His presentation just blows you away.
Yeah, that was at Brown Memorial, and a lot of the if you just Google his name on the YouTube search,
Yes.
type his name in, you can watch a lot of those little videos. If you have someone in your congregation who isn't on board, you can say, just watch the 10-minute one or the 7-minute one or the 20-minute one, and they'll be inspired.
Yeah, exactly. If anything else, it will really show how we are part of such a complex, diverse, beautiful web of life. It's all interconnected. Well, I want to thank everyone who's been on and joined us, our presenters, and I look forward to hearing more from all of you about what you're doing during these challenging times to continue caring for creation. I want to show our last slide here in just a moment to just wrap it up. And that is that this webinar is part of our Faithful Green Leaders training program. If you want to find out more resources about how to build your team, there's the website for that, our webpage. And we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we will provide many of the resources that were mentioned here on this webinar in a follow-up email. So we will send this recording as well. So God bless everyone. Take care and be healthy, well, and safe. Bye.